yeah, so we spent quite a lot of time talking to them.
Yeah, had a lot of free dinners. Yeah, it was great.
Make sure you got a free dinner from all of them. And then said no.
We did our own thing, really.
My name's Adam, and this is about you in your journey in music. I'd love to hear kind of the origin story of the band, and we'll talk about what you guys have going on recently.
Okay. Well, we have that classic met at college story.
Okay.
We, not the entire band, but a few members of the band were studying in a city called Dunedin, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, which is quite an infamous student town. And one of those cities that, you know, really bloats up when the college is on, and you know, so when it's not there, there's not a lot of life going on in the town. And it was really kind of a melting pot for a lot of people from different ethnicities and different ideas and different backgrounds, you know, to get away from their parents and really kind of become individuals, you know, as colleges. And so we've got that classic story. In our second year, after finding out that we were interested in music, we moved into number 660 Castle Street, which is where the name came from.
Okay.
And, it was really kind of a natural way. There's no real intent in us ever being a band. We loved playing live music. We loved music. We weren't necessarily musicians, but we loved being together. We loved creating the reason for our friends to come together. So effectively became known as the 660 Boys. And it really kind of flourished from there. So once we left university, we thought we'd have a go at writing some original material. And that's over the years of university, Chris and some other members kind of became involved as it kind of grew bigger. So at the end of university, we had a go at writing some original material, more so as like a memento, you know, capture the memories of what it was being at university and having a band. We all thought we were going to go away and get jobs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to rewind a little bit. First off, you guys bought that house, right? Did I see that on Instagram?
Yeah, a couple months ago we bought that house.
That's so rad. How rad is that? Do you guys practice there, or like what aside from it being kind of the birth of the band, what is it utilized for?
We've got a lot of plans there. At the moment, it's just a functioning flat. You know, there's rooms for people to, where people are staying while they attend Otago University. But the dream, why we bought it, is we want to provide free accommodation for kids who need it to attend a university there.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's really cool. We've set up it's basically a charity foundation we've set up. So 4 to 5 kids a year can live for free and attend the college. So we've teamed up with the university in Dunedin, a partnership together. So the kids get a little more than just the free rent. They get access to us, access to the Performing Arts Centre down there. Studios.
That's dope. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were like, okay, we're gonna just turn it into our own practice studio, like our little flop house, or like, you're doing good with it. My mind went in the total like, let's just have this rock star party.
Very good people. We're very, very good.
You sound it. Well, okay, Chris. Well, I'm curious. Were you both born and raised in the same area, or no? Totally different places.
Everyone in the band is like super spread out. From I actually was born in Australia and moved over to New Zealand when I was like 18, 19. And I met these guys, you know, moved to Dunedin. Everyone's from really, really different backgrounds. You know, some of the guys grew up on farms. Some guys grew up in, you know, in the big city, as you know, as big as we have in New Zealand. And
what part of Australia? What part of Australia?
Darwin, Australia. It's tropical. It's really close to Southeast Asia. It's hot. I had like 4 coconut trees in my backyard. It's that kind of joint.
Oh, rad. How did you get into music?
My family was, they're all musicians and actors and weirdos. And so. That's
cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. It's cool now. At the time when I used to get like, you know, they'd have like soirees is what they'd call it. All these like musician and artists would come around and I'd get wheeled out in like a little tuxedo and have to like sing a song and play piano. And it didn't seem that cool then, but looking back, it's kind of fun.
That's rad. So was piano the first instrument you learned?
yeah, piano and violin, and it was a classical family. I wasn't even allowed to listen to modern music when I was growing up. So I discovered that later in life.
So how did you get to New Zealand? You just decided to go to college there, or?
No, my mum, I actually grew up not knowing my mum at all, and found out she lived in New Zealand. So I went to meet her when I was like 19, and
wow,
fell in love with the place. Really, it's such an awesome country, and I fell in love with the south of New Zealand. This place called Invercargill, which is where my wife's from, and Dunedin's not far from there. So yeah, just New Zealand became my home really quick.
That's amazing. And then you guys you said totally different areas. So were you close to the college then where you grew up?
No, I grew up in the big city, which in the north, Auckland, which is the largest city in the country. So I'm basically like a city boy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Oh, Auckland's like the big capital ish, right? Ish. But,
people from Wellington will get very upset with that sentence. So.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't want to offend anybody. I don't even offend anybody.
Anyway.
That's the town I think of though when I hear New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like growing up there?
It was cool. It was interesting. There weren't many Māori. I'm Māori, which is the indigenous people of New Zealand. There weren't a lot of them around where I grew up, and but so that was interesting, and there was some navigation that needed to take place for that. But look, I wouldn't have any way. I don't know any alternatives, so it was fine. It was fine. I had a good family. They're quite a creative, quite aspirational family, so it was like quite expected of us to do well, to go to university and to make something of yourself. So yeah, I got no complaints. It was good.
Was it musical at all, your family?
Yeah, they kind of, my family will say they're good at everything. That trait, it's important that you can play a sport, you can play guitar, and you can cook, and you can entertain, and you can host, and it's that kind of big together competitive family. But all my music education was more together with my family around the fire, singing songs and passing the guitar around. And my experience was very much like a collective, inclusive one, which I love a lot about music. I love the idea of bringing people together and doing something collectively. Yeah.
Were you in bands growing up, and real quick, actually, was guitar the first instrument you learned?
Yes, guitar is really the only instrument I know, and just singing, because they were the ones most accessible to us. I never was in bands. I don't even consider my upbringing that musical. It's just that we had guitars and songs around all the time.
Okay.
And it was not even really in much of a dream of mine in a way. I just found myself in a band because I liked being with the boys, and I liked, again, like that. I have that feeling of bringing people together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and then you both met at college? Were you both going like classes together? Like, how'd you meet?
I didn't actually go to the college, but Jai, our guitarist, and Eli, our drummer, that's where these guys met, playing rugby, right?
Yeah, I met one of them in the same rugby team together, and then the other one I was in the same dorm together, and then I think we met Chris because we needed a bass player, and
I had one,
and he had a bass player. And yeah, look, it was real happenstance, to be honest. There was no real, not that we set out to be a band, and least of all to be successful. We're kind of following our noses.
So once you started writing songs, like how were you playing, like locally around the college? Like what was the early days of the band like? Yeah, well,
we were a cover band for our entire time at university, basically. And then, like I said, when we left, 3 years after being at university, we had a go at writing some original material. And that was very much reflective of what was happening in the New Zealand sound at the time. Roots music, very reggae influenced. It was, big sing-alongs, bit of drum and bass in there. That's the kind of what the New Zealand music scene was really taking off at the time. So we wrote some original material, we put it on Facebook, and we left. We went home and went about starting the next chapter. And it blew up on Facebook basically, and people went nuts, and we started sending out the EPs, you know, dropping them off by hand, sending them in the mail. And then we did our first gig in Christchurch, which is the other big city in the South Island. And it just went berserk. It was on a New Zealand scale, went crazy. No one really seen that before. And I couldn't tell you why. It's just, I think maybe for all the reasons we've been saying, that there was no real, there wasn't a lot of thought put in it. It was really just as raw. It was super raw. It was real authentic. It was just what it was.
So you guys were a cover band for a while. You said 3 years, right? And then you just decided, hey, let's try to write some original songs. Did you have kind of a fan base going for those years, or where were you playing? Like,
yeah, I suppose it was just mostly at flat parties and 21st birthdays, and wherever we could play. We really just enjoyed playing live.
Open mic nights.
Open mic nights, just whatever we could, and would bring the whole troop of friends along with us. The whole rugby team would come.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
it was definitely these guys, because I wasn't around in those very early days in the cover days, but it was definitely these guys' ability to bring people with them and create like a sense of community. I think that's why it worked on Facebook. I think Mutt's being bizarrely humble, if you know it. That's very strange. No, but I think they had a really amazing ability to bring people together, like you said, and to create a community. And it was very early days of Facebook, so it was people were looking for something, and the songs are really good, so that doesn't hurt.
Sure. So was it a recording of your songs, or was it like a live clip, or like what blew up on Facebook?
Oh, there were recordings. We went into what we thought was a professional studio and professional setup. But
what was that like? Well, tell me about that. Where was the studio?
It was in Dunedin again at just I don't even think it was a studio. Basically, here's what happened. We were like, okay, we're going, so let's try and write some original material. And so we just set up a band, set up in one of our rooms at our flat. So, okay, here's our rehearsal spot. We'll write songs here. We need an engineer / producer. And so we had the great idea to go down to the local music store and ask the guy behind the counter if he knew an engineer or a producer. And he said, I'm an engineer and a producer.
Of course he is.
And we said,
you found the guy.
Yeah. And we said, you've got the job.
It's a running thread throughout this band, actually.
So weird. When I think back, it's so ridiculous the way we went about it.
And so he put together a collection of songs. Did any of those make that first record? Or did you re-record everything to put that album out?
We re-recorded some stuff. It was very rough. It was very loose. A couple of songs made the original album, but not the rest didn't make it because they weren't great. We just didn't want to put them on the album for some reason. We were like, oh, it didn't make sense to us. The song was already out that would put it on an album, because that was the naivety that we had. We were just like, oh, we would rather write completely original music on the album than
do what was already working.
Yeah.
So you got this guy behind the counter. He records some songs for you. You just throw them up on Facebook and come back. How quickly does it take off? Is it the next day or?
No, I mean, it was a slow burn, like, a couple months. It was a word of mouth situation.
Okay.
Literally start a Facebook page and make have the music free.
And people would message the Facebook page, and then to buy the thing. They say, yeah, we'd like, an EP. And so Eli, our drummer, would be like, okay, and jump in his car and drop it off at the house and grab the cash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was our marketing strategy, is send the drummer.
That's amazing. That's cool though. I'm sure it ties into the whole community piece of it, right? I mean, having everybody come together, the fact that a member of the band is showing up at your house to give you the CD, to give you the EP, like, that's just life-changing. I've never heard of that before. Can you imagine having your favorite band just knock on your door and be like, yo, here's the disc you wanted?
Well, I remember when I joined the band, maybe 6 months after that, maybe something like that. And my first gig, I was really just coming in to fill in for a couple of gigs, play some bass. And I went to the first gig at this little bar, South Bar, And it was ran. I didn't know. I just, these guys gave me the CD, said learn the songs, which I kind of did. And I turned up and it was just heaving. Like it was probably illegal how many people were there. And I was like, oh shit, this is a real band. Like they've got a following. So people like really get into this shit. So it was kind of cool from the outside, not knowing these guys, never having heard of them, to go, oh, there's something happening, something bubbling. And like, again, I think it's that kind of community thing that happened.
Wow. And then you put the record out. How much later after that was going did the album come out?
I think a year or a year and a half.
Okay. So you just, were you tour or not? Did you tour at all through that first kind of EP, or were just mainly just local shows?
We kind of did. We didn't. I don't think it was a tour, but we took shows, if you know what I mean. We'd go to a spot show here, spot show there. We started doing a couple of little beach festival little things around New Zealand, and then because we had this fan base, all the labels started knocking.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so we spent quite a lot of time talking to them.
Yeah, had a lot of free dinners. Yeah, it was great.
Make sure we got a free dinner from all of them. And then
we did our own thing, really.
Did you put out you put the first record out with Massive Entertainment, right? Or are you still with them?
Well, that's our label.
So, that is your label.
Yeah. So strangely enough, we had the foresight to create our own label right at the early days, and not to sign a licensing deal, but to sign a distribution deal with Universal. So Massive is our label, and we had a Distribution Plus, I think it was called, with Universal at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because everyone was just trying to take everything from us.
Right. So you guys are brilliant, and then the record goes platinum like 1 million times, 9 times. Which
it's gonna be the first. Apparently, it's gonna be the first diamond album in New Zealand history, which is, I didn't even know that was a thing.
That's insane. And think of the bands that have came out of there. I mean, Lord is from New Zealand.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing artist. And to have that's so huge. What a massive thing.
Yeah, man.
Wow. Okay. So then that record as well, and then obviously the second album is incredible as well. But with the success of that first album, like, how did that take you out of New Zealand at that point? Where your shows just getting massive there in New Zealand? Like,
yeah, that opened the door overseas. We started traveling regularly to Australia, a couple of stints to Germany and the UK. And they did really well. Look, there's a massive expat community in a lot of those places. So we were able to kind of just waltz in and play big rooms. And then I guess our education began then, which is weird. We had this hit album and we're locally successful, and then we went about learning how to do it all again, because it was just such a mistake. And so that's why it was a long time between Drinks, the first album, and the second album.
Sure. Well, I mean, to have something kind of blow up when you're not expecting it, then it's like you kind of have to catch up, right? It's like, okay, this is taking off. Like, what do we do? Like, you weren't really expecting it, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of learnings around that. But the first album has opened those doors. And look, so our trait is, I think we get bored really easily, and we're not. It doesn't excite us, the idea of doing the same thing twice. And that the bands and music that we like, they evolve and they grow and they take you along with them. And those are kind of cornerstones of what we were trying to do from an early stage, because we wanted to do this forever.
Sure.
Break it.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of like worry in your mind at all when it came to putting out the second record? Like, is our career gonna continue? Like, are we gonna be able to follow this up?
We have that every single thing we release. We're worried if it's like all gonna crumble and then I'm gonna have to get a job.
Yeah.
I think that's the nature of being a musician, being creative. And I think that worry and that fear is something we've learned to run towards.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, then you go, the second one goes #1 again, goes, 1 million times platinum. And then obviously it works the second time. And how does that like further expand the career? Does that take you to the next level?
Yeah, then a bunch of other labels from overseas came knocking, and we went through a process of talking, and then we actually signed with Capitol here in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And we started, doing a bunch of stuff in the States, and shows became bigger, and at home it was just going berserk, because we had managed to achieve the crossover from the first album being like this rootsy reggae infused local earthy thing that people were so attached to because it was quintessentially Kiwi, to then turning around and making pop songs, because that's what we wanted to do. And it just took what it meant to be a band from New Zealand to a whole different level. You know, we kind of broke a mold there, and rustled a lot of feathers at the same time.
Oh, is that right? Just with early fans being like,
yeah. Look, another thing we say to ourselves is, you gotta risk losing fans to gain a whole lot more.
Sure.
And again, if they like the old stuff, they can always listen to the old stuff.
And you have to evolve it as a band. Like, who wants to hear the same record 10 albums in a row?
100%.
Like that, when bands evolve, it just, I mean, look at a band like U2. Like they haven't been a band and have a hit record for the past 30 years or more, 40 years, because they did the same thing every time.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we'd get bored. I'm sure people would get bored hearing the same songs over and again. And I don't know. It's just kind of, that's how we do things. Even if we tried to make the same music, I don't think we could do it. It just doesn't come out.
Sure. And when you put a record out in 2019, the end of 2019, that must have been difficult going into the 2020. Were you able to support the album at all, or talk to me about where you were when COVID happened?
That was super frustrating. We released an album. We were on tour at the time it dropped, and we were just coming back through the UK, through Europe, and we were finishing a tour, like our biggest ever tour in Australia. And then did a 5-date tour in New Zealand. And the week after the last show, New Zealand went into lockdown, because for those who don't know, New Zealand acted pretty quick on that. We had like 2 cases in the whole country. It was locked down for 8 weeks. And
well, you guys were also early on getting out of it too. You were having festivals and stuff when everyone was still like locked in.
Yeah, and we benefited from that as well. We got to play a show when we opened back up, which was really good. It was like our kind of biggest success so far back home. We played in this place called Eden Park, which is like our biggest stadium. And so we're actually the first band to ever play there. Like no other artists ever played there, so it was pretty cool.
Wow, how big is that? I mean, what's the seating on there?
It was like 50,000, something like that.
Holy yeah, 50,000, whatever.
It was disappointing, because the album was really good. That last album we put out, and we didn't have an opportunity to bring it over to the States and do a proper run in Europe. So that was a bit of a bummer that we kind of lost a bit of an album cycle. So we're just going to make a new amazing album. That's the plan. Yeah.
So what were you guys during the lockdown or over the past year and a half? Were you able to start working on a new record? Like, what were you guys up to, and how do you adapt to something like that?
It's weird. It wasn't didn't feel overly creative. I mean, we're always working on it. We're creating the vision, and we're trying to figure out what kind of record we want to make. But it was really hard. We were lucky that we finished the tour at the start of 2020. Got that over. We went into lockdown, so we weren't necessarily in a place to start working on music anyway. It's kind of holiday mode,
right?
And then we got to tour again through the end of 2020 to the start of 2021, and then New Zealand went back into lockdown. So we're pretty lucky. We kind of dodged lockdowns there, and now we're just here in America because it's too. I don't know. It's hard to be creative at home. I don't know why. We've kind of just reached this level where it's too easy to be lazy at home. that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When did you guys come back, or when did you come out to LA?
I think we've been here about a month now.
Yeah, true.
We landed. We played a couple shows. We played Boulder Rock Festival in Napa.
Oh yeah, Napa. How was that?
Love
awesome.
Yeah. Love it.
That's such a cool spot. It's such a rad event too.
Yeah, 100%. Really played a couple of side shows around there, and then we got down to LA, and then we've just been in the studio ever since, working on the new album.
Wow! And how much have you did any of it start in New Zealand, or was this all like fresh when you got here? Because you said you've only been here for about a month. Yeah,
most of it's fresh. I mean, we came with a bunch of ideas, but we always consider that kind of training. You know what I mean? We're not attached to it. So we just write songs to write songs, and then we get here and start thinking a bit more critically and being a bit more deliberate. So I think maybe a handful of ideas might have scraped through into this stuff now, but we're on some new wavelengths. So we're just enjoying making stuff from scratch.
Do you guys write as a band?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are. It's been different every album, but this album we really wanted to do that together. And I think I can speak for everyone when when I say we're all a little bit trepidatious about doing that, because we haven't done that for a while, not since the first album written together. Mm-hmm. And but it's actually been amazing. I think the training paid off. Maybe I don't know what it was, but we've somehow got into a kind of symbiotic kind of thing where we're finishing up each other's sentences. There we go.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. And then you got your these two shows coming up are your first official, what would you say, like headline shows in the US?
Yeah, proper headline. Yeah. And so LA on the 9th and at the Fonda Theater, which is I'm really excited to go there. Here it's pretty cool. And New York on the 14th at Webster Hall. Yeah,
two iconic venues you get to play.
Yeah, pretty pumped about that. So we're going to rehearse for that next week, I think.
And you obviously have been able to play. What was the first show back? The big stadium show you did?
No, what was the first show?
Actually, it was in a place called Waitangi, which is a pretty significant little town in New Zealand. But we basically shut the entire town down, and depending on which local you ask, ruined their serene place or made them a lot of money. So it really depends who you ask. It was a cool way of starting a tour. To be honest, it's one of those beautiful places in New Zealand.
You said it. What you described it as something? You said it's
historically very important.
Okay. Yeah. Can you? Why would you say?
Better equipped to answer that.
Well, it's just we played right adjacent to the Waitangi Treaty Grounds. It's basically the place where the Māori, the indigenous of New Zealand, and the British Crown signed the treaty to bind the two.
Interesting.
Which again, depending on who you ask, is a travesty or it's a great thing. But regardless, it is kind of the birthplace of modern New Zealand. So to be able to play right next to it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That is amazing. That is awesome. And then you're working on the new record now.
Yes. Yep.
And future plans. I mean, aside from the two shows, is it just going to be finishing up this record in LA?
Yeah, we've got another week in the studio until we do these two shows, and then we have a tour booked through the UK and Europe in November. Mm-hmm. We had one in Australia too, but because of the Australian COVID situation, we've had to postpone that till next April. And we're going to be here until we're going to have Christmas and New Year's here because we can't get home.
Yeah, we're stuck.
We're basically stuck because
really,
there's no. You have to quarantine when you go back to New Zealand. 2 weeks in a hotel room, and there's so many people trying to get those rooms that it's just too hard. So they just go too quick. So we're going to do the tour, come back in December, continue to work on the album, which is good because we've allowed ourselves more time to get this album right. Uh-huh. And then have Christmas and New Year's somewhere, I don't know, Vegas or something.
Mexico's come up a few times.
Mexico, there you go.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
We'll come visit you in Nashville, maybe.
My house is open to you guys. We'll have a big Christmas dinner.
Let's get the wall, man. Let's sort that
out. A big Thanksgiving, big Christmas.
Yeah, all those things will be cool, and then we'll be here till January, and then we have to go to Dubai of all places because we're the New Zealand music ambassadors for the World Trade Expo in Dubai.
Wow, that's quite
pretty cool.
Yeah,
it sounds impressive. I don't know what it means, but it's pretty great.
Yeah, but I've never been drunk in Dubai before.
That's true.
That's a reason to go.
Bucket list. There you go. What do they have you doing? Do you know?
We'll perform some songs. One of our original New Zealand iconic songs called "Don't Forget Your Roots." It was basically the first song that put us on the map back home.
Sure.
Last year we re-released it in Te Reo Māori in the native language, and that just again for some reason took us to a whole other place. So we're going to go over there, perform that song in Māori with a big kapa haka group, which is a traditional Māori
dance
group. It's hard to explain. I don't know if you've ever seen a haka before when the All Blacks play. Well, have a look at what.
I'm going to look it up now, right after this conversation.
Yeah, HAKA. And so it's like one of those groups with us performing a song at the World Trade Expo and just wowing the crowd.
There's actually a video of us playing "Don't Forget Your Roots" at the Eden Park show with a huge kapa haka group. So if you want to get an idea of how that,
cool,
pretty powerful stuff. Check that out on YouTube or wherever.
What a huge thing to do. Like, was it difficult to translate the song into the native language and everything?
Oh, I had the right people to help me. Right. Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty difficult to sing.
Would you, any plans to write a song like that or no?
We just actually a month ago released another song in Māori back home. Part of what is Māori Language Week in New Zealand, where a lot of local artists released songs in Te Reo Māori as a way to try and reinvigorate the culture and the language in our home country.
I love that. That's really rad.
Yeah, so there's a really strong movement back home to reestablish the culture and the language and I guess normalize it. And yeah, so we're really stoked to be kind of taking the lead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you speak Māori?
No. I don't.
Oh, is it difficult? I'm sure it's a difficult language to learn.
It's just another language to learn.
Yeah, it's a language.
Just another language.
But it was just really lost to a lot of Māori because, for racism and a lot of Māori parents didn't want their kids to learn it just for the risk of stigma and a risk of being vilified for it. So it was never given to me, which is a shame. So part of this movement and writing songs of Māori is to change that for the next generation.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And thank you both so much for taking time to do this. I know you're in the studio and you got busy, you got stuff going on, but thank you so much for doing this. I have one more question, if you don't mind. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Play shows. Don't wait to be asked.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't wait. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it.
Bring it back.